and this called emptiness cannot be is what the Great Seal tradition emphasizes. So the great bliss part is cultivated that by the so-called what's called the yogas of Naropa, where the practice of nurturing the inner heat, tumo, probably the most famous, that by manipulating the flow of energy and increasing this heat of this inner heat of tumo, it is said that bliss, a sense of well-being, from there even to like an overwhelming sense, overwhelming not in the sense of like you become disoriented, overwhelming, but overwhelming in the sense of like your limited sense of I, of self, is blown apart. So then it's called like great bliss arising. So, right? So there's a certain connotation with great bliss arising that lacks presence of mind. But precisely in the Great Seal, it says, if it is the right kind of great bliss arising and the right kind of presence of mind established, then these two do not cancel each other. And these two, in fact, would arise simultaneously together. So, like when we experience ordinary types of experiences that we call feeling at ease, feeling well-being, feeling happy, feeling blissful, feeling pleasure, that whole, right, the whole spectrum of that, right? Often the more intense this becomes, the more you kind of lose yourself. But there's the two kinds of losing yourself. There's losing yourself, which is like maybe the word overwhelmed, right? It's a good one. So that's the scattered losing of self, which in this case, that's not the right great bliss. Then there is the great bliss where clarity, sharpness of mind present. So if we eat, some very flavorful, very tasty chocolate, you can kind of have a version of a type of losing the self. But that kind of losing of self is lost in the chocolate. Then you'll be reborn as, cacao beans at level. At best, you will be reborn as a cacao bean, only to be crushed by someone, cacao maker, and turn into chocolate. But the great bliss that we're talking about here doesn't contradict clarity. So here it says, if clarity is obscured, then it is not the great bliss that we're talking about. And, if there is this great bliss, but there's no clarity, then it's not. Or if there is this clarity, but there's no experience of wellness. There's a presence, but then it's lacking in any, hint of bliss. Then it's also wrong kind of clarity. Perhaps, manifesting in things like self-righteousness, rigidity, holier than thou. a clarity that is so sharp that nobody wants to be around you. You're so cutting, right? So cutting edge that you're slashing and bleeding everyone who comes near you. In the great middle way, nothing can be identified. So the middle way tradition is basically, like I said, it can refer to two traditions. And in a way, these two traditions are quite different from each other. But they use this expression middle way a lot. So one side is the Gelugpas, and mostly through their focus on exoteric sutra material, they invest a lot in studying of emptiness, topic of emptiness. Their debate traditions, their scholastic energy, all goes into it. Right? Even their meditative. I don't want to suggest like they're just reading books. They take to their heart. They take it onto the path. But it's all about, carefully and accurately negating the object of clinging. So when you negate the object of clinging, that means you cut identifying with anything as self. Whether it's mental, emotional factors as self, physical factors as self, conditions as self, all of that, all the basis for establishing a sense of self, no matter how subtle, needs to be done away with so that there's no identification. The Jonangpa tradition also talks about the Great Middle Way. But their Great Middle Way is a little different, although, again, it's about not identifying. Not identifying may be easier to understand what they're talking about here. Non-identifying doesn't mean, to be blurry. It's like if you need like glasses to see, to walk around, to drive around. Non-identifying, take off the glass and walk around in a blurry world, Then you don't identify, then you cannot tell, right? Wait, is that Cheryl over here? Or is there Mick over here? Not that kind of non-identifying. Non-identifying means not personalizing it. That, they're praising me now. They're criticizing me now. They like me now. They don't like me now. All of that are forms of identifying. You fixate. So this is Ray Chongpa's way of trying to make amends, speculating that perhaps he has upset his teacher for being gone for too long. Any questions?
That was amazing. Thank you. We didn't see any of that on our own. Right, guys? Right? We were like,
Right.
I got it.
oh, you got it all. Nick, you didn't tell us. You had to tell us.
Oh, he set up very
Mick
well.
says you never asked.
He said it. Dr. Lai said very well. So
But
I have no corrections.
and okay, so he's bragging and showing off, and
Yes. Showing off his understanding. Yeah,
It's
because Ray Chongpa, one of the things also, so maybe Ray Chongpa did something like this, but the exact details of his showing off, maybe, an editor in later centuries kind of, massage things a little. But we know Ray Chungpa has a penchant for showing off.
That's true.
Right? His profile is accurate. Maybe the details are elaborated later, but his penchant for showing off. Because one of the things he was proud of is, of course, he has been to India.
Yeah.
And his teacher Milarepa has not. He's been to the Holy Land and met the real thing. He met all the different Mahasiddhas. Then he came back, with a lot of new transmissions, new teachings, things that his teacher never heard of. And so he had a chip on his, shoulder, and he had a penchant for showing off. So it's not beyond him, to come back and show, I learned this, I learned that, to his teacher.
Do you think the fact that the door to the cave was closed actually does mean anything, or was that just a projection? I guess we don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know.
We don't know.
So anyway, let's see Milarepa's
Let's see what they say.
By the way, we paused for a long time on the first sentence from the first.
Apart from mind, there's no Buddha.
Yeah,
That line.
that line.
Yeah. Apart from mind, there is no Buddha. There is no quicker path than the nadis and pranas. There's no other friend than the three precious refuges. There's no more excellent experience than bliss and emptiness. There's no one kinder than the genuine Lord. Beings should take him to their crown and put into practice the unerring instructions. This is how to develop a certainty in your being. If you gain realization within yourself, then the lineage instructions have been received. When you have determined your own mind, signs of experience and confidence will quickly arise. When loving kindness has arisen in the mind, then sentient beings are accepted with compassion. When one sees the Buddha Guru, blessings are naturally received. Put a few lines together here. If you understand the meaning, there's Dharma there. If you didn't understand, it's just a little ditty. Son Ray Chungpa, are you well? This old father here is feeling quite fine. But first of all, yeah. So if you look at the footnote for 175, it says, if you didn't understand, it was a summoning song. Basically, he's saying, if you don't understand this, what he just said, then it's all just kind of parroting. That's just his response to Ray Chungpa's bragging, right? And Ray Chungpa was using like names. Ray Chungpa was dropping names, as we would say. Great perfection, great seal, great middle way, right? Maybe I'm reading too much into his bragging, but in a way, to say that there's no reference point is sort of like saying to his teacher, yeah, I've been gone long, I've been going short, long, short, here, there. Come on, lighten up, old man. Right? And then like you close the door to the cave, come on, blocking, not blocking, get over it, so he's doing his thing, So then the old man, the old father, so he said, okay, you think I'm old, and just like how old people are, like get grumpy, and so I'll own that. It says, but this old father here is feeling quite fine. That's first thing, right? That's the kind of maybe nothing much to do with Dharma, but that's the dynamic that you see going there, right? So this son is I Ray Chungpa travel around town. And almost like saying, I know these three grades, so doesn't matter where I am, in the towns, up here, I'm fine. How are you? Is the father just happy and well? So his response, son Ray Chongpa, are you well? This old father here is feeling quite fine. There was a movie that came out many years ago. In the right mood, it can be quite enjoyable and enlightening. It's a Korean movie called Why Did Bodhidharma Leave for the East? Either leave for the East or come to the East. It's a Korean movie. And the movie revolves around a young monk recently became a monk to train in a Zen monastery. And the monastery that he went to sent him up to a hermitage above the monastery. And in Korea, they have things like this. Generally, monasteries are, first of all, outside of the city. Then even in the outskirts, above the monastery, further up, like literally up, are hermitages where retired abbots would live and spend the rest of their days in retreat mostly. So this young monk was eventually sent to go up and attend one of these old abbots, or possibly, old like elders of the monastery. Then this old monk somehow has mysteriously, it's a little, the whole movie, the style is a little surreal. You cannot tell passage of time. You cannot tell, like exactly what's going on. So it has that style, that quality. But this old monk has a young boy, little kid, that he apparently picked up one time when he was down in the city, and basically this homeless child that he ended up bringing back up to the mountain and taking care of. So basically now you have three generations, like 7-year-old, 6-year-old, and then a 20, 30 something, and then this 70-year-old monk. Anyway, this reminds me, this Ray Chongpa and Milarepa, at one point the teacher was very sick, so this younger monk said, I need to go down to the city to get medicine for you. The teacher said, no, there's no point. Just forget about it. There's no point doing this, because what will happen will happen. But the young monk insisted, no, I will just be gone a little bit. Then when he went back down, basically then he went to visit his mother. And all sorts of things, then he had second thoughts, like, oh, should I have become a monk? Maybe I should go back. Maybe that's how I truly practice love and compassion. I should go back into the city, everything, Then then he came back finally late at night. Then, there was the proverbial teacher's cave is blocked. And next morning, there was an interesting exchange. It's very similar to here, actually. Actually, the more I think of it, it's like it's almost like that movie read, the whoever made the movie read this exchange here.
Yeah.
Because likewise, the young monk, but not exactly, he didn't. Yeah, anyway, the young monk was having all sorts of big fancy ideas, like Buddhist terminology in his head, basically kind of justifying returning into the world for the benefit of beings, blah, 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 all of that. Teacher really gave it to him and said, are you sure? Are you sure you're not? Huh? As Milarepa here says, right? Are you sure? Huh? Yeah. If you didn't understand, it is just a little ditty. Huh? You're just parroting. You're just singing songs that you don't understand. And Milarepa is calling Rechungpa out. When one sees the Buddha Guru, blessings are naturally received. Put a few lines together here. If you understand the meaning, then there's Dharma. If you didn't understand, all your fancy vocabulary, all your learning is useless. Especially in this tradition, relationship between Milarepa and Rechungpa. The necessity of Rechungpa not forgetting that Milarepa is to be perceived as Buddha. Then, as long as Rechungpa is still playing games around that, then it's not going to work. So, as long as Rechungpa's pride doesn't, as long as Rechungpa doesn't overcome his pride, he continue to vacillate between my teacher is a Buddha and my teacher is just a grumpy old man, then all his talk is basically just theoretical. All his learning is just theoretical. Just intellectual, yada, yada, yada. That's what Milarepa is saying to him. Now, as a footnote, Milarepa is not that naive to not know that there are charlatans who play the part of the teacher. And there are people who are not qualified, whom other people regard as teacher, or who present themselves as teacher. Milarepa is not, blind to those problems. But it doesn't change the fact that, at least according to this tradition's methods and techniques of self-transformation, of a path to Buddhahood, when one sees the Buddha Guru, blessings are naturally received. In a way, that is Rechungpa's issue, He obviously recognizes enough that Milarepa is a reliable teacher. Go away. But still, he cannot stably see Milarepa as awake. In contrast, Milarepa never had a problem, never had the challenge of needing to fix his perception of his teacher, Marpa. This is despite Marpa behaving in a very harsh and unreasonable way towards Milarepa. On the other hand, Milarepa had only been patient and kind to Rechungpa. But Rinzhongpa never got it, or at least didn't get it for a long time. But this is not to judge Rinzhongpa either, you know. This is just to say these are different processes that have to unfold. That these are different processes that we all have to go through. And if we find ourselves more like Rinzhongpa and less like Milarepa, this is not a competition. This is not saying, you know, you're more like Rinzhongpa, you're not Milarepa. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that whether you feel that you are more of the Milarepa kind or you are more of the Rinzhongpa kind, know that either way, there's work to do. There is progress to be made. At least in this method, in this path, receiving the Guru as Buddha is non-negotiable. Again, to say that it's non-negotiable doesn't mean, you know, you can artificially force yourself to perceive someone that you're studying with as Buddha. You can't. You cannot. If you try to do that, you know, blind, or you try to do that as a way to shortcut the process, also won't work. Yeah, also won't work. Anyway, we come back to that first line that you all said you spent a lot of time. Tell me some of the things you all talked about there.
No, we're all old people.
Remember, that's right.
Well, basically, that everything starts in the mind, and so then the rest of the song is about mind. There's the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. You know, if your mind, if you've taken it in, then it's going to be reflected in your own mind.
Okay. Say more.
But the other thing is, we aren't to reject our minds, you know, whatever state we find them in, because
Yes.
Buddha is there. I don't know.
What else? What
Yeah,
did you
what
talk about?
Jim, what do you remember?
Very little.
Very little.
Yeah, I'm getting in touch with nothingness here. But I think what you said was kind of the theme that, you know, the mind is everything, and we tend to reject what shows up. And in that, we're rejecting Buddha.
Yeah.
There's this view of accepting everything.
I interpret it kind of like, you know, the mind is full of error. So it's a little bit like a Plato concept. That when you're dealing within the mind, you're going to be missing the mark, so to speak, because we're dealing with non-conceptual stuff. You know, the idea of perfection and forms, the whole Plato thing. That's what came to my mind. I have no idea if that's what the author is talking about.
You know, it's sad. We had a great discussion, as I remember. And it was like wasn't it about being able to accept the stuff about ourselves we don't like? Wasn't it kind of like that? Am I remembering correctly?
Yes, that's what I meant about accepting everything, you know.
Yeah.
Even the difficult things that show up.
Yeah.
anger and defilements is just what's showing up. Not react.
Yeah, Diana, do you remember anything?
I remember talking about accepting everything as not being as connected in what you're talking about. I'm really struggling today because I'm thinking I'd love to hear you, Dr. Lai, define mind, because I'm not sure I understand. Because for me, that sentence, the way I think of mind, it really doesn't equate. So I'm wanting to go back to the definition of mind.
Mm-hmm. Apart from mind, there is no Buddha.
Yeah.
So, how does that line connect with the rest of that song? What is that line doing there? What is it supposed? What do you think it's supposed that it's doing there?
I always talk too much, but I want to say, based on what you said this morning about the bragging and stuff, showing off,
Uh-huh.
it seems to me that it's the point of that is to say, yeah, but those are the words you know how to throw around.
Uh-huh.
But what have you realized inside of, what have you realized?
Sure.
But
how does that line, so if that line answers his song, makes sense, right? But how does that line connect with the rest of Milarepa's answer?
Would it be, or just what's coming to my thought, is that what Renchipa was saying is almost like hanging out in emptiness? And then what Milarepa's kind of like bringing it down to earth as far as, yeah, you can hang out in emptiness, but if you don't deal with what's here, but what's here is what you practice with. I'm not being clear of the thought that's there that I'm having, but it's like bringing it down and grounding him into. Does that make any sense? I'm not being very clear.
I think yes. I think it seems like you're saying Milarepa's response to Rechompa. I think that much is clear. What you just said. The details are maybe not clear, but still, my question now is: how does the first line connect with the rest of what Milarepa is saying?
One way I see it is he's saying you have to trust your own mind.
Is what?
You have to trust your own mind, not your external teachings, what you've heard. That, because in the middle of the song, there's that line, when you have determined your own mind, signs of experience and confidence will arise. So it's like you're looking the wrong place. You're looking for the answers outside, and Buddha is in your mind.
Okay.
You have to trust your experience.
I've
Part of
heard.
Rechimpa's problem is trusting himself too much.
Yeah, because
Well,
what I've heard before is don't believe everything you think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so, I don't know, I'm just, to think just Christianity, Tibetan, all of it. There's no way around all of the bad stuff that is happening and has happened. And, it's just it's just a part of it. But to even say, well, here's Buddhism, and then, the lotus flower, and then there's good and bad. And, we just have to deal with it because that's the way it is. Just some days it's just real, especially lately, it's just really hard to, I know I have to accept it. I know all that, but some days it's just hard, when, you think about the pain that so many people are going through. And I know that, when I start feeling that, I need to get into thinking about somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get out of myself and, because it's not doing me any good to worry about, these people. There's nothing I can do about it. Luckily, I have a job where I can go every day and help people. And,
Yes.
and on a Friday afternoon when I'm pooped at 4:30 and I'm helping a student that really appreciates it, I'm fortunate because, I'm just fortunate in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But some days it's just really hard to realize that all of this, comes out of good. And I'm more and more, I just don't believe in God. I just believe it. I'm, more and more, I just think I don't even want to hear any of it. I don't want to hear any of it. I don't want to hear about it.
For me, looking back at this, here's what it feels like to me. It's like it's paradoxical. It's like he's pointing to all these things that are really helpful. Go ahead,
Yes.
do those, like Nadi's prana, free the refuge, do all this.
Yes.
And something will begin to change as you take it in. And then you keep doing it. You keep practicing what I think of as the Dharma. You keep practicing, but don't trust it. Don't make that the God. Don't make the finger pointing to the moon.
Yes.
The God, because eventually this will be absorbed.
Those are graven images.
Yeah. And so that Rachungpa is making a mistake of the finger. And so eventually this will just manifest. But you have to practice it and hold it dear and then forget it.
Right. And so the first,
One thing that's really interesting is in the 12-step Buddhist meeting, we have, it's very ecumenical. Everybody, Zen, we've got this, we've got mindfulness, we've got this. And I remember the very first time that John was talking about what Dharma meant, and it was totally different from the way that I've always been, given. I was given a different definition. And I remember Aisha was in there with me, and we were both like, you're wrong. Can you just see us? And, I really appreciate that when I can take the time and I can meditate and I can find out, what works for me. It's kind of like, let's have some backbone and make some decisions. And, this is my commitment. EBS has been my commitment over the years. How do I want to think? How can I keep my mind open to, to different things and still keep my own convictions, because I don't really think it matters that Rinpoche is, it's just what deity, or not deities, but it's just it's just what people do. All his songs are just about what, everybody's different. you know, we gotta, you know, whether or not he's a big shot or not, you know, he's one of, you know, we have to try to love and have compassion. And that's,
Mhm.
you know, that's the hardest trick.
So it doesn't seem like much of this has to do with the mind. It has to do with the heart and it has to do with experience.
Heart and mind here is used. Tibetans don't differentiate the way we differentiate heart and mind. Not just Tibetan, you know, but any Buddhist writings, especially if they're translating some ancient Buddhist texts. Yeah, heart, mind, talking about the same thing. Yeah, that which knows.
Well, how should we think of that then? As like just a combination of the two concepts in the Western
Yeah,
world? Or
that which knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
So-
Not the is a differentiated from the ego.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
differentiated from the ego.
Yeah, without any kind of further judgment, whether it's good or bad, you know, it's that which knows, you know, whatever, you know, that knowing is this mind here.
You know, they say the big question is, you know, where is your mind? Where's your mind? Where's your mind? Can you find it, locate it,
Mhm,
touch
mhm.
it, color, you know, all the
Mhm,
stuff, all the
mhm.
senses. So the other day I tried to put my mind on my back and oh, my back started hurting. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so the back is starting to hurt. Then the part of the technique here or recommendation here is say, okay, so the back is hurting, but is the mind hurting? And what's the difference between the back hurting and the mind hurting?
Yeah.
So there are, you know, things to train the mind like that. Anyway, I don't have any, you know, like secret teacher's handbook that tells you actually here this is how they're all connected, right? I'm just raising this question to kind of say, raising this question as an even a question for myself, like, wait, if I take away this line, would I take away from this song in an important way? If it does, then it's there for a reason. And then from there, we can go, what might be the reason, right? So it seems like this line, first line, is an important line, but it also seems like it's a random line. So random in the sense of it's not explicit. Tata, it's not explicit as to how this first line is connected to the rest of it, right? So what we can do is we look at the key words in this first line, mind and Buddha. Now, the next time mind turns up is where? It's when loving kindness has arisen in the mind. Oh, wait, when you have determined your own mind,
Right.
the next time that word turns up, or one of the keywords turns up, when you have determined your own mind, there is significant. There's some connection there. But when loving kindness has arisen in the mind, I can say, based on my experience reading these types of material, it's not a significant connection. Yeah? There is just saying, loving kindness has to, you know, turn up in your being, right? So no special significance of, apart from mind, there's no Buddha. And the next time an important term from that first line turns up is the Buddha Guru. So this line, in fact, this place where the word Buddha turns up, Buddha Guru. That's an important connection. So if you take this Buddha Guru back to the first line, apart from mind, there is no Guru. And what is this mind? This is the mind that needs to be determined.
Determine whatever that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that means.
Whatever that
When you have determined your own mind, what does that mean?
Differentiated, maybe.
Differentiate in what sense?
That from the ego. Identifying with the experience.
So
Present.
when you have identified mind. So here, it's in the Mahamudra tradition of the teacher helping us recognize nature of mind rather than the activities of the mind being determined as mind. So there is mind, and there is what mind does. What mind does is what we now call mind. Whereas what mind is, that is what the Buddha is. And that is what the Guru is. So determined here, here when it says, when you have determined your own mind, here it's not really talking about when you have, when you trust yourself. So elsewhere, I'm sure he says that's important, but here it's a very specific. It's like having recognized nature of mind through the grace, through the kindness of the Guru, your right merit, your enough merit has ripened, grace, so to say, blessings, grace, kindness of the Guru. When these two coincide, come together, then your nature of mind is perceived. It says, when you have done that, when that has happened, then signs of experience will arise, and then confidence will quickly arise. Signs of experience. Here, experience is technical term. It's not talking about, general experience. Here it's talking about, the Tibetan word is nyam. Nyam are all the funky things that arise from intense meditation training. Like feeling bliss, like feeling, elevated, feeling like your mind is now so stable, so focused, so clear. All those are nyam. Then when nyam arise, if you know what to do with them, then confidence of the right kind, the kind that he's talking about here, confidence will quickly arise. Otherwise, nyam can become a cause for straying, for being misled. So nyam can increase one's confidence in that, this is the nature of mind that was determined, or nyam can become a cause for straying. Yeah,
Strain,
stray.
Straining.
straying.
Straying.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was-
going
Straying.
off course,
yeah,
wandering off in the wrong direction, which is mistaking Niam for Tok realizations, mistaking these intense ephemeral experiences as having reached the goal. So Ray Chompa, in a way you could say, okay, so here is a good indication of the dynamic that is being set up in this exchange here. After this song, right, Milarepa, the narrative says, with that, he opened the cave and they went inside, right? So the whole time, apparently, he was not even in the cave. He was up there, above the cave.
Yeah.
Then he came down, he opened the cave and they went inside and he says, I was just kidding around just now. No meaning to my closing the cave. I wasn't even inside. So I wasn't, upset not letting you in. But I can see that you still have great attachment to the 8 worldly concerns. You must abandon them and meditate in the mountains. Meaning, stop wandering around in the city. Stop looking for entertainment down there. Part of the entertainment is being entertained by people who think he's a great spiritual master. Part of the entertainment is him wooing and wowing them with his knowledge, his teachings, or his ascetic look, or whatever, And then having indulged in that, he comes back, then his guilt, another layer of crap. He projects that his guru is upset with him. Then he sang that song bragging.
But it seems like Milarepa sees right through him to his lack of confidence, and he just falls away when he's with Milarepa.
Yes. And his lack of confidence, Milarepa is not saying you should have confidence. Basically, Milarepa is saying you have not determined this mind yet. And that's why you have to second guess yourself and second guess me. So the ultimate instruction is given in the first line. The practical instructions is given following that. So it's the ultimate and the relative, both of which he has to integrate. Then the practical instructions, goodness gracious, Milarepa has already told him how many times.
Yeah.
It's kind of like us, it just does
Right.
not get through.
Somehow he's always so gentle with Champa, and so it always works out because
Yeah.
he doesn't criticize him like you're saying with us. We need the same, right? We just need to point it out to us over and over again.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about how you're in a retreat or something, and the teacher has poured out all this great teaching, and instead of like soaking it in, you're sort of pissed off because someone else got to have tea with him and you didn't,
Yes.
or stuff like that. It all just comes back down to like,
Yeah.
but wait,
Yeah.
not me.
The 8 worldly concerns, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so instead of like the Dharma, right? You're like, I didn't get invited to dinner.
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is what we do because we think that is what guru devotion is when it's not. It's our stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, how come he didn't like warm up to me, or how come she, you know, didn't warm up to me? That's the human side of the guru. Like, why do you care about that side, you know? On that level of things, yeah, some people connect, some people don't. And then in that way, like, who cares?
Wonderful.
Insofar as receiving the Dharma, insofar as actually healing ourselves, who cares about that other side, you know? Or rather, you should not care about this other side. But that gets in the way. And that's getting in the way of even when there's two people, forget about a center full of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is just two people, you know, Milarepa and Rechungpa.
Right.
Milarepa and Rechungpa's own insecurities, own lack of, you know, or rather, you know, not lack of even, but Rechungpa's still being stuck in the 8 worldly concerns. Then, you know, when you are in the city and when you come back, because of 8 worldly concerns, you have to second guess yourself, you have to second guess your teacher. If he has really overcome the greater degree that he has overcome the 8 worldly concerns, then whether he's in the city, whether he comes back early, whether he comes back late, he doesn't second guess. He doesn't have to second guess himself. He doesn't have to second guess Milarepa. Right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
there is a worse scenario than this scenario, which is still with 8 worldly concerns and no Dharma concerns. Then also you can seemingly be in a state of not second guessing yourself and not second guessing your teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are 3 stages to this. Corresponds with the Zen saying, you know, before I practice Zen, right? Mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. When I was training in Zen, mountains are not mountains and rivers are not rivers. Now that I have, you know, tasted Zen, lo and behold, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. So before you are even training in Dharma, in any significant way, then you never second guess yourself, you never second guess the teacher, because you are full of arrogance. The arrogance is so overwhelming, like you don't even care what the teacher thinks. So you never second guess. Then during that long period where the path is, when you're practicing Zen section, then, you know, all levels and all degrees and all forms of second guessing will have to occur. So again, it's not saying, you know, it's not saying, sometimes we mistake this and think, oh, let me get rid of second guessing. But it could be falling back to the first part, you know, where you're not second guessing at all. So Rechungpa's second guessing is a necessary part, in a way you could say, of that process. And Milarepa knows that. That's why Milarepa never gives up. You know? So Milarepa is a genuine teacher in not saying, oh, you're so disappointing, go away. Again and again, Milarepa puts up with it.
Not only that, he calls him his son.
Yeah, you know, he puts up with it, right? If Milarepa had judged Rechungpa based on his experience with his teacher, oh, finish, right? Because he was so devoted to Marpa, even when Marpa was by all accounts abusive, he never doubted Marpa. But Milarepa never used his own experience to measure his students. So that goes to show, Milarepa was such an amazing teacher that his own process did not become his way of measuring other people's process. Couldn't be more different, Rechungpa's process and his process. So Milarepa, instead of saying, what did I do to deserve Rechungpa,
Yeah, we were kind of thinking, I'm speculating what the teachers think when they look at this room full of us, and all the kind of like goofy, distracted things we're worrying about instead of what they're saying to us, And they still come back. You still come back and talk to us. It's amazing. Even though
It's the process.
it's a
Yes,
process.
the
Yeah.
process, yes.
Hopefully the teachers.
Even the teacher have to abandon the 8 worldly concerns,
Yeah.
So this, you must abandon them and meditate in the mountains. So he's saying to Rechungpa, not yet, not yet. You think I want to keep you in the mountains because I'm afraid of losing you to the city. But really, the distractions down there, you cannot handle them. That's why you're coming back with so much baggage, Whereas Milarepa, truly, when he goes down and he comes back, makes no difference, he doesn't pick up extra baggage when he comes back. And back to that movie, the Korean movie. Yeah, it's really that exchange, and this is towards the end of the movie. Billy has no baggage, the teacher, whereas the student, with all his learning and all his, reasonings and all his, internal dialogues, it just shows that he's not free yet. Just the exchange there is basically, there's no like crescendo or some sort. It's a meditative movie in any case. So you have to be in the mood to watch it.
What did you say the name of it was?
Why did Bodhidharma come to the east or go to the east or something like that?
I looked it up. I think it's what caused Bodhidharma to leave for the east.
And it's Bodhidharma, not Buddha Dharma.
Right, Bodhidharma.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the title actually, because that expression is a Zen koan. Yes.
Why
We
has
can't hear you,
Bodhidharma
Laura.
left for the east?
I've got to leave, but I just wanted I can really relate to this lesson, especially this past week. So just thank you so much. I appreciate you showing up, and
Yeah.
I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Hi, Laura.
So the title is Why Has
It's on you.
Dharma left for the east? That's the title.
It's uploaded on YouTube, so you can access it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just put in the chat the title. It was done in 1989. It's almost 3 hours long.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why
Wow.
it's 7.4 out of 10 because too long.
So,
Yeah. And so there, like I can tell you, I was going to tell you that exchange basically, right? So he goes down, then he secretly goes see his mother because there's a lot of guilt surrounding his leaving his mother to start with. So it's all very heartfelt. someone in crisis. You know, he had a lot of guilt leaving his mother, and so basically the mother was blind, and so then all these questions of why he left. You know, is it shirking his responsibilities, or truly he wanted an end to birth and death, samsara, all of that. So you know, so him going back was. Anyway, then on his way back, there's this kind of surreal monologue, soliloquy, you know, whatever it was. There's this monologue or dialogue. You're not very sure it's a monologue or dialogue, you know. So it's done in a very artistic way, where basically that whole dialogue was like him rationalizing, like it's better to return to the world, love it, take care of it, rather than escape to the mountains. After all, the Buddha says, you know, everywhere is the pure land, blah, 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 you know, stuff like that. But when his teacher finally confronted him and called it out, the teacher said, I remember this line, it says, you know, with bloodshot eyes, where is the pure land? Those bloodshot eyes that you had when you were down there, where is the pure land? This ground that you are standing on, is this the pure land or is this the hell realm? This is essentially in the less dramatic. Here in the Rechungpa and the Larepa, Rechungpa wasn't that tortured. But in the movie, it was a really powerful scene. But because it's moving so slowly, I think most people probably miss how powerful that was. Anyway, I think we end here today.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Yeah, really, this was fantastic.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to see you next time.
Yeah, I bought a different charger thinking that it will solve the problem, and indeed it solved the problem for a few weeks, and then now it's back. So I don't know.
Oh.
And it was like, you know, buy a charger because somebody said it would work. Now maybe I should buy an Apple charger, not one that looks like an apple but doesn't cost like an apple.
Yeah.
Let's see if I buy an actual Apple charger. This will solve the problem. So anyway, tata.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well,
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.
Did you get all that?
What?
Did you get all that?